We're back here on Debrief. Nearly every new step forward in technology online brings with it some bad along with the good. We just saw that before the break with Facebook's unfortunate ads targeting hate groups. And next in line is Apple's newest cult product. The iPhone X brings technology long used by police and intelligence agencies into the palm of our hands: facial recognition. Face ID will replace your home button as the primary way to unlock the new iPhone. So what will that technology mean for us all down the line? It often takes between months and years to understand the implications, but we'll try a little bit, at least in 5 minutes. Dr. Vili Abraham is a consumer behavior lecturer and a researcher and a marketing consultant. Vili, thanks very much for being here.
It's a pleasure.
All right, the next step in tech that we have seen on a larger scale now in the palm of our hands. Explain how facial recognition in a phone is going to work.
All right, so it works by spraying an object with dots, infrared dots. This is how it sort of draws a picture of your face, meaning gathering information about our particular features, because every one of us is different in different ways. But it's really simple, and it has a very large array of applications. For example, today it's used in airports in order to be identified. In the past, if you remember, here in Israel, somebody would take your passport, hold it up, look at you to try to identify you. Today, it doesn't work like this anymore. You're recognized by the technology. In China, for example, people can buy by smiling. They look into a camera, they smile, and this is how they pay. And also, it's also used in churches to track attendance in the United States. So
really?
Yeah.
a very advanced way for churches to track attendance. That's interesting. How is it going to work for us? Yeah, that's not good for students in the future in classrooms. That won't be good for anyone. What about in our phones? What about on a personal level? What will it be used to do other than open our iPhones?
Make payments. I think that today, for example, I have iPhone 7, and I use my fingerprints, biometric data to open it, to sign into different applications. And I think it's really important because, look, one of the things that are not recommended is to have one password. And naturally, we have one password for different applications. And the thing is that if somebody, finds this password somewhere, then he can gain access to all applications.
But as you mentioned, there are fingerprints that solve that password issue now. Why do we also need facial recognition? What can facial recognition do that fingerprints can't?
Well, I think it makes the process more seamless or more natural, because when you're using your fingerprints, you have to bring down your phone, you have to put your finger on it, and this way you just hold it up and it scans your face.
So let's look at the other side of all of it, because this, as you describe, it's one more way to make our lives seamless in many ways, to make our lives easier, which certainly smartphones have done. But to each of these advancements, there is some sort of downside. What do you think the implications might be of facial recognition, of that level of technology being in our phones?
Well, I think there are some ethical issues. If we look into a study that was conducted by Stanford University, they've checked whether this technology would be able to differentiate between a straight guy and a gay guy.
Really?
And it was able to do this with an accuracy of 81%, as opposed to 61% by people. When we look at people and we say, well, he's straight or not straight, it's usually around 61% or 50-50. So the technology can do this. By the way, technologies, face recognition technologies can identify sharks. For example, in Australia, there are some tests to see whether we'd be able to detect a shark, and it can differentiate between different creatures and humans. So one of the ethical concerns is what's going to happen in countries where being gay is illegal. For example, in Russia. Right. Okay, people will be able to be identified and be put in prison. What's going to happen in the workplace? Because this technology could maybe say something about, by our facial expression features, about our political views, our sexual orientation, about different things, and this means that we can be discriminated against. So we have to be really careful.
While all of these companies, and as we've also seen just before the break, all of these companies are trying to catch up with the calls to censor certain content or to try to rein in hate and discrimination online, this is actually a tool that could help discrimination practices go up.
It can, but already in Europe, they're writing into law different principles that would make it, first of all, it would mean that your biometric data coming from facial recognition technologies is yours, and your consent would be required to use it, meaning it would be illegal. So Europe is doing this, and I think it would be right if other countries followed the step.
The next question is then who sells that data, if that data can ever be sold?
Well, the thing is that the social networks have information about all of us, and potentially all of them can use things to advertise things or sell us things. based on the information.
And of course, 6 months down the road, everybody will be accustomed to this, and facial recognition will be the new normal. Dr. Vili Abraham, thanks very much for being here. Some important looks at both sides, because as we have seen pretty thoroughly, really throughout this week, all of that technology brings with it a lot of good and bad. That's it for us on Debrief this week. We'll be back next week on Monday with another edition, same time, same place from our studios right here in the Jaffa Port. Until then, have a great weekend.